Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey.
Okay, we're just trying to add everybody here that needs to be here. Our team in SA, trying to get them online here with us. All right, you guys can all hear us and see us though, correct? I believe you can.
I think so.
The others will let me know once they get in. Okay, wait, they're not. Ah, there they are. All right, promote to panelist. Okay, perfect. All right, where are they? They didn't come through. There they are. Aha, I see you now. Ask to start video. You said what was that, Mike? Uh-huh.
Scroll over, click unmute. Okay, now they can hear you.
Hey guys.
All right, you can hear me? Perfect.
There you go.
We can hear you. You can hear us. You can see us. Awesome. Hello, hello. What was that? Okay, we cannot hear you.
I think I see.
Oh, I hear you now. I hear you when you said uh-oh.
Good? Okay.
Uh-oh.
Come
Nambuya.
closer.
It's like no more.
Lorado, too.
Oh, Lorado. Okay.
I'm like, hey, Lorado. Yeah, I'm like, I see you. I see you.
Where's Fakile? Did Fakile not make it?
Yeah, did Fakile not make it?
She had a hard time getting transport to come here.
Yes,
Okay, all
She
right,
couldn't-
all right.
that's her main struggle. She would love to come, yeah. So we'll see.
I know. Yeah, she was talking about that. Oh, maybe next time.
Well, just so you guys know, I know everybody's been like commenting and saying stuff about our attire. So we have a bit of a, even though this is Pastor Teacher School and Fivefold Ministry Campus class, we have a bit of a prophetic thing going on right now at the moment too in the ministry center. So we are prophetic super spies. We're getting ready for a super spy event that's coming up mid-November. So just so you know, you might be seeing some emails or some banter about that going out here and there. But yes, if you start seeing pictures of us looking awesome like super spies and CIA agents, then yeah, you know why. So you might see some of that on Facebook just so that you're in the loop. So we're just having a blast.
The truth is, we just like to dress up.
Yeah.
We just-
Come on, we're superheroes, we're super spies. Love to get dressed up.
Yes, we love to dress up. Need an excuse to do it. That's it.
So we keep making our own excuses to dress up. So, oh,
I
it's
love
good,
it.
good to see the people coming in. Oh, Joshua, I'm glad that you're here again.
Josh, yes.
Belinda, oh, I haven't seen you in a while.
Oh, I love Josh. Made it clear that he is an AMI PTS student.
Yes,
Thank
he
you,
did.
Joshua. School pride.
Everyone just has their names on the list, not Joshua. He's Joshua T. Moorhead, AMI PTS student.
Just so you
That's
know.
his name. He got a long name. That's what we're talking about. PTS pride, baby. PTS pride. All right. So today, yes, we have a very, very special treat for you guys. We have our resident pastor and campus principal, Pastor Jessica Toach, as you guys saw already. She's going to be doing a teaching on bitterness versus judgment. Dun, 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 dun. So I guess the black and white is befitting. So I think we might be preparing for a funeral, but funeral of your flesh. But anyways, yes. But yes, actually we're preparing for resurrection as well. So yes, don't just be sitting around feeling poopy and sorry for yourself. We're actually trying to get you guys what you need to step forward in the next level of your calling, to step forward in whatever you're going through at home, at church, at work. I know that looking over projects, listening to phone calls, we've been seeing a lot of things come up in the terms of hurt, bitterness, judgments, you name it. Gossiping, backbiting, as they call it in SA, I believe it's Skinner Becker. But yes, so there's been a lot going on and a lot of stuff to work through. So we actually put this together to be a blessing to you guys, to help you to answer some questions, because sometimes it's hard to try to answer the questions for this person, and then the next phone call, and then the next phone call. So we just make a teaching out of it and then make a book out of it. So That's what we're doing, guys. We're going to give you the answers once off, and we can just send you there so that all your questions are answered.
Yes, amen. We will be recording this as well. So
Yep.
you can, anything you missed, you can catch up on it. But yeah, like Nate said, by the end of this message, you're going to feel lighter.
Mm-hmm.
You open yourself to hear what the Lord wants to tell you today. And yeah, you can walk in this calling, be that pastor, be that leader that you've been called to do without the extra weight, without the extra stuff hanging on you. So open your heart, and Jessica, she has so much wisdom. She will just give it to you and make it very plain and straight to you, okay?
Oh, yes. This is going to be a fun one, guys. So, all right, Pastor Jess, come on up stage.
Hello, everybody. I don't know if I'll sit on this chair because I might be a little too short. Me and Denise understands me here. I'll look like her. You'll only see the top part of my head. Yeah, okay. We need to lower this, guys. There we go. All right. I'm just going to take a look at who all joined us today. All right. Belinda, welcome. We've got Erica Schreitzer, Gwendolyn, Joannie. I'm so glad you can make it, Joannie. This message came in perfect timing. I was just marking and working with one of her projects yesterday. I'm like, Joannie, you have no idea how much you need this message. You better be here. So good girl for walking in that obedience. I'm proud of you. Kelly Doris, welcome, Kelly. Joshua, good to see you. All right, Michelle, you need to be here on this side of the camera next time. Michelle has a student here, and she's in Mexico, so just a short little drive across the border. So you better be here. We'll expect you to be in class. Pamela Richard, hello, and Uli Sher. Nice to see you guys. Well, as I came to put this message together, I had to change up the subject a little bit. It was originally going to be on bitterness versus hurt, but then the Lord kind of took over my journal. I'm like, okay, guys, no, that topic ain't going to do it. We have to talk about bitterness versus judgment. And one thing the Lord really showed me, one thing I'm hoping to really accomplish as we talk about this message, is to not only deal with the judgment in bitterness in your life, but learn how to prevent it. Here's the thing. We don't always have to struggle with these bitterness and with these judgments. Through a process of going through the renewing of our mind, and as I'll teach you in this message, I want to help prevent that bitterness from ever forming in your life and teach you how to come and to walk into grace, to replace your bitterness with love, and how to replace your pride and judgment with grace. So let's get started in there. I remember when I was young, being a part of an international ministry, we have the joy of learning many different kinds of ways to play Uno. Now, for any of you who don't know what the Uno is, it's a very simple card game where you have to match up numbers or colors and to get all the cards out of your hand. Now, what I didn't know about this game, having played it for so many years, is that every country has its own version of playing this game. You know, one person has it that you can put multiples of the same card down. Another person has a trick that they play in there. Now, you can imagine me and my sisters playing this game with other kids from Switzerland, from the States, and we're all sitting there like, no, you're cheating. That's not how you play this game. What is wrong with you? And everybody in life is exactly like that. We all have our own rules and our own idea about how we play the game, our own opinions that we bring to the table. And it's just a crazy thought because, you know, I don't know what it is about games, but games bring out the best and worst out of everybody. I mean, whether it's a board game, whether it is a card game, especially when we have to win, it brings up so much of our own pride, so much of our own judgments and opinions. And I can't think of a better example for us to see how pride looks in action. When you're looking at pride, you know, we all have this word that comes up, and many of us see how that person looks. We see, okay, we say he's prideful. Oh, he's just so full of himself. He's just full of pride. But what really is pride? And what does it have to do with us and the character that we have? Well, I'm hoping to start off by breaking some of that down. I'm going to start with mentioning some of the symptoms that pride has and how you can identify it in your life or identify it in the lives of others, especially you pastor teacher school students. More than not, you're going to have to take somebody else through this lesson, so take note of these symbols. To identify judgment, one of the main characteristics or one of the main symptoms that come up is strife, vying, resentment, envy for each other. This causes us to be at strife with one another, a competing, a vying for an opinion. I mean, you can see it anywhere. I mean, what causes the biggest fights, especially you married couples out there, you know how that vying looks amongst each other. You fight for your opinion, you strive, and then you just bicker. You bicker because why? Well, you don't listen to me. Well, this is my opinion. Oh, well, this is what I have. And it's just plain old strife that gives the enemy license into your conflicts to cause you to be at war with one another. And the thing is with strife, it's not even just a continual attack and vying with another person, but it's also a striving in your spirit. You will never be at peace. You're always agitated. You're always feeling at edge. You know that sound when somebody scratches the chalkboard and there's that irritation and you just cringe? That's what it's like in your spirit. Whenever you have that judgment, it's that irritation. It is that vying and that discomfort in your spirit. That is one of the main ways to identify strife. It's that loss of peace. You are unable to come to peace because your spirit is so at strife. And you blame it on the other person. Well, they're just being mean. No, your spirit is just reacting to them that you can't come to peace. Simple conflicts suddenly become a big drama. And it didn't need to be just because your spirit was at strife. Now, I'm going to go through these very quickly because we have a lot of ground to cover today. So re-watch this message again and again. And please, guys, if you have any questions, any of you who are in live class, please go ahead, ask your questions here. If anybody's watching this later on YouTube, just call in and a minister will answer any of your questions. Another symptom of judgment is loss of relationship. You will not be able to hold those relationships because you're always at resentment or always competing with those around you. Finding friends is going to be hard. Finding relationship in your marriage. Now, I'm not talking about divorce. I'm talking about relationship. I'm talking about friendship. You see, just because you are around somebody and because you are connected in some form or way doesn't mean that you have a relationship. And even if you do have a relationship, it's maybe not a good one. But through your judgment, you remove all the joy and love that is meant to be in that relationship because you are trying to manipulate the relationship to be in the way that you want it to be. And that actually repels people. Imagine that. People have a free will and don't like to be put into a bubble. I'm afraid it's true. And you know, that is the most devastating part about judgment is that you push everybody away and you end up being alone and you feel alone, but you don't know why. Well, it's because of simple judgment. Because you are trying to conform somebody into what you want them to be, they get repelled from you and try to be their own entity. And maybe you might live together, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you will like each other. Another symptom is a stony heart. Now, we identify this a lot in bitterness, but it also is true when it comes to judgment. When you judge somebody, you put up a wall. You know, some of the most judgmental people are some of those who are the most insecure. And our judgment becomes a wall that we use to protect ourselves. You know, it's not just the case of not wanting to love or not wanting to hurt. No, we put up our judgment because we're insecure and we're wanting to protect ourselves. The only thing is that nobody then has a say in your life. You don't let anybody in and have a say in what you do and who you become in any opinion in any area because you are just holding up that wall and saying, nope, this is how it needs to be. This is what I want to be. This is what you need to be. And this is it. And you don't get a say. And it repels people. And people don't want to be around that. And you will feel so alone because, you know, God made us to be in communion with one another, to take opinions and experiences from others and to build on them. God made it that we can work with one another. I mean, if we all were self-sufficient, never needed anybody, why would we have different genders? Why would we have so many different people from different walks of life? It's because we all need to learn and add to one another. But if we are so prideful in thinking that we have all the answers, to thinking that we have the solution to every problem and that we don't need anybody, we put up a wall and not only prevent others from influencing us, but we prevent the Lord from influencing us as well. And that's the danger of pride, is you lock yourself away in your own little world where no one else can help. Now, that's great and all if you want to be a hermit, but for the rest of us who especially want to have that communion with the Lord and have that relationship with him, we have to let others in. Curses and spiritual attack. Through our stony heart, through our own pride, we open up the door for curses. We open up the door to the enemy through our pride and our arrogance. It gives the enemy an open door. I think by this time, all of you should know how curses work and how they manifest. But yeah, it opens the door for the enemy to attack your relationships, to bring strife and envy, to bring curses and open doors. Suddenly, things start going wrong. Suddenly, you start getting sick. Suddenly, your body is failing you. Suddenly, your car is acting up. Why? Because you open the door through sin, through judgment. I'm going to talk a little bit more about why judgment is a sin in a little bit. But one thing also is repeated circumstances in your life. Now, any of you who have not read or listened to Apostle Collett's Law of Judgment message, I trust you. Go to it. Go listen to that. It's a killer, but oh good. It burns so good. I had to listen to it before this message. It was quite the eye-opener. No matter how many times you go through it again. You'll hear something new. But what happens through judgment is that when we judge others, we take up our own authority and force it upon somebody and take God's control out of that person or out of our circumstances. And we force our rule over somebody. Now, because of this, you open the door to trap yourself in that curse and in that circumstance, that judgment, that curse that you spoke out on somebody else, that curse comes back at you. When you judge, it's more than just a portraying of your emotion and your opinion. You're literally cursing the person that you are judging. And that curse then comes back at you, and you get trapped in that same circumstance again and again. Relationships, you always judge the kind of man or kind of relationships that your sisters get into. Then you end up having those same kind of curses and same kind of men coming back at you. You judge the way how people should spend their money, and then suddenly all the money leaves your bank account. Well, that curse that you spoke out on that person has now come back at you. And you need to realize that you will repeat that circumstance. You will repeat that curse in your life again and again until you break the trend, until you break it and release and give the Lord back that control and allow him to displace that curse you spoke over with his blessing by bringing it back under his law. Here's the thing. Our reign brings curse and destruction because who is over us? God is our ruler. God is over us. So when we judge, when we usurp his authority and put our control, our say over somebody, we remove his rule from that person's life and from our lives, and we become the ruler of our lives. And that leads us to curse, and that leads us to the enemy coming and manipulating us and pushing and controlling us. But if we rest under God's authority, if we rest under his reign, we stand in blessing. So it's the choice of, okay, do I want my say? Do I want what I want? Do I come under God's authority, or do I come under my own and come under my own sin and pride, which brings us into the enemy's camp? So yeah, I don't think any of us want to repeat that curse again and again. So let's move on, shall we? People always let you down. Here's the thing. When we have our pride, we have our own image, our own standard that we portray, that we force others to come upon. Okay, if you are a good friend, then you have to do this, this, and this. Okay, if you are a good sister, then you will always say this, you'll always do that, and this is what it means to be a good sister. And we have all these ideas of how people make us happy, how people need to act, how people should act, and then get discouraged when no one meets those expectations, when no one meets us where we're at. Well, here's the thing. It's a false expectation you're putting on somebody to try and force them to be who you want them to be. And they will never match up because Lord knows we're weak vessels. We are foolish and we are quite stupid. And we will never meet those expectations. Heck, we go from glory to glory in striving to become that vessel, to become that person that God needs us to be. So if we work so hard to become that vessel for the Lord, how much more are we not going to be able to meet those expectations in our personal life? You know, especially when the reward is being yelled at and strife and envy. You know, nobody really wants to be forced into that image for that kind of reward. And, you know, when you can come to peace and accept the relationships for as they are, you can enjoy the fruit of that relationship. But while you're trying to force somebody to be that image, to be who you want them to be, they're going to get discouraged, you're going to get discouraged, and it's just going to lead to vying and envy and resentment and to hurt for both of you. One of the main signs to identify this judgment is that you're never at peace. You are always striving. Whenever something comes up, you are never able to just sit and to let it go. There's always something in you to want to react, to want to say something, to want to do something, because your spirit's not at peace. You always want to have that last say. You want to have that last comeback. You want to tell them how it is. You want to tell them how they're wrong and how you were right. You're not able to just come to peace, to just say, you know what? It doesn't matter. You always have to have a say. You always have to have add your opinion, because you're not at peace within yourself, within your own spirit, to be able to rest in it. I mean, peace is the ultimate place of rest. If you are not at rest, you will never be able to just be who God made you to be. You're always going to be striving. You're always going to be pushing. You're going to be pushing someone. Someone's going to be pushing back at you, and you're just going to end up in a fist fight. So when it comes to where it all began, it was actually the very first temptation that the enemy gave us. I mean, I want you to go back to the Garden of Eden. What was the first temptation? To eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, to have wisdom and understanding. Think of it this way. When Adam and Eve were first in the garden, who taught them right and wrong? It was the Lord. He came to them in the cool of the day and told them, okay, this is right, this is wrong. Okay, this is how you must react. This is how you take care of this. Until that point, they for themselves could not tell what was wrong or right. They only purely had the Lord's revelation and his words to tell them and to teach them. But when the enemy came and tempted Eve and told her to eat of that fruit, it was so that they could have self-awareness, so that they could tell for themselves and judge according to themselves what was wrong or right. Because until that point, judgment was in the Lord's hand. But in that moment, when they ate that fruit, judgment was then in our hands. And we then took that judgment and moved it and projected it onto everybody. And we judged others. See how God judges us, we began to judge others. And we became our own lords instead of relying on the true Lord, the true Savior of our souls. Because when the Lord rules over us, he brings peace, he brings understanding, he brings order. When we judge over others and we become the lords of others, we bring chaos and destruction because we rule according to our own understanding. We rule according to our own experiences, and we bring death and destruction. And this is where it all started. And how to overcome it is quite simple. But one thing I want to point out, and this was a really big revelation the Lord gave me when I came to put this together. Pride is the nature of the enemy. Now, when pride is in you, you judge. Just how like when you have love, you act in compassion. When you are prideful, when you are self-aware and full of yourself, you will judge automatically because you will act upon your own experience. What is pride? Pride is me, myself, and I. Pride is my experience and my way. It is the essence of our flesh. Pride is our flesh. And when we react and we give into our flesh, we are full of pride, and that pride leads to judgment, to trying to control others, because I'm the ruler of my own soul and my own life, aren't I? Not the last time I checked the word. Last time I checked, God has the rule and reign and says who and what we need to become. But when we try to decide how we want to run our lives, when we get full of ourself and our nature, we take on our ruler and become the ruler of our lives and control our lives, but instead take on the nature of pride and therefore act out the nature of the enemy. I mean, think about it. When you look at the world, what is the main temptation that they portray everywhere? It's pride. All about me, myself, and I, my food, my sex life, my experiences, what I want, what I don't want. It's all about me, and it's all about pride. And that's what the enemy uses to tempt us again and again, because he knows that if we act and give into our pride, that we will trip ourselves up and bind ourselves to our judgments, and it will keep us trapped. But if we learn to displace that pride for something else, then we will remove that clutch. We will remove that trap that the enemy puts us in again and again. And I said it here, but I want to say it again to make it very clear. Judgment is a fruit of pride. See, there is a way of preventing judgment. We think we must just stop judging. No, it's not you stopping to stop judging. It's you to stop having pride. When you don't have pride as a stronghold in your life, you will not judge. It's just like saying, when I don't have a sore in my leg, I won't hobble around. It's the same. You know, we're trying to deal with our limp. We're trying to deal with how we're hobbling. But if you deal with the main hurt, if you deal with the main symptom, you won't walk out in that pain. You won't stumble. So let us displace this pride with grace. I made a quote here. It says that grace is the antonym to pride, because they're not the same. Pride is all about me, me, me. Grace is all about them, them, them. When you give grace to somebody, when you give someone grace, you give them the opportunity to have their own free will. You give up your control. You give up your say. And instead of choosing to try and force them to act in a certain way, you encourage them to act out that way. You encourage them to walk out and to do what they need to do. And it's a complete nature, and it releases so much power, and it brings so much rest. Because while we're trying to have so much pride and so much trying to hold ourselves up to a standard, we will always be tired. But when we rest under grace, because who gives grace? God gives grace. He is the giver of grace. You know, if you look out in the word, it always talks about how the Lord gives grace to man, and then man, through God's grace, gives it to others. Unless you rest under grace, under the salvation that God has given you as a believer, rest in the imperfections that God gave you, you will not be able to accept others' imperfections. Because what is pride? You see all of your hurts and your insecurities, and you try to cover them up. You try to be an example to others and try to be perfect, instead of realizing that you were made broken. And you were made broken on purpose. And when you can accept that, and accept who God made you to be, and accept the imperfections and all the mess ups, you can then accept it in others. But until you come to peace in who God made you and come and rest under his grace, you'll never be able to give that grace to others. Grace is a gift that God gives to us, but it is for us to make the choice if we are going to accept that gift or not. Until you make that choice to wear that grace as a mantle, you won't be able to cover others. Judgment is that action of pride. But when you come to grace, you can learn to act out in love and in compassion. When you displace that pride with grace, you will automatically act out in love. So you need to make that switch, to make the choice. And I will tell you how in a moment. But judgment is our own understanding and experiences projected on others. You see, we think that it's, just this level that we give to everybody and everybody must kind of get to our level. No, we take our own experiences, we take our own understanding, and we project it onto others and expect them to act in a certain way. I was working with my husband the other day, and we were going through the Pride of Life together, and he says, when you see somebody who they really are, the image and experiences you project on them don't match up, because we have an idea of how people should act. We have an idea of how we expect them to act. But if you look at the real person underneath all the walls, underneath everything that has you see them, you see that who God made them and who they really are is not the way that you see them. We will look and we will see a bad ogre who's always mean, always has something nasty to say, and is, a big bully. But if you really look at the person, you'll actually see that they are shy and insecure. And instead of confronting, come to the limelight, they hide away in the shadows. The images don't match up. But when we take it, because, if I'm quiet, that means that I'm being offish and I don't care. Well, then they're being quiet, so that means that they don't care. No. If you look, they're just insecure and they just don't have anything to say. But because we act that way, because that's the way that we see it and the way that we act, we expect others to act in that same way and then get discouraged and angry when they don't. Well, they're not you. Plain and simple. They will never be you. But we try to force everybody to be mini us's, don't we? Well, you have to say it. You have to speak to me like this. Well, you have to come to me like that. Well, you have to act around me like this. Why? Why? Because if God wanted them to act like that, he would have all made us copies. But we're not copies. We're all unique. We are all bold and arrogant in our own opinions. That's just the way we are. We're human. We can't force others to be who we want them to be, because it's not who God wants them to be. And we are in direct rebellion and forcing them to sin if we force them to become who we want them to be. God gave them that nature. God gave them that stumble for a reason. Paul walked around with that limp. He walked around because he was beaten so bad. And you know what? He could shine in those imperfections. Even though he could barely walk and he hobbled around, he could still shine and be an example for others to follow, to say, look at my suffering. It means nothing according to the grace of God. Are you letting them walk around with that limp, or are you trying to correct it? Well, God doesn't want them to correct that limp. God wants them to walk with that limp. And it is for you to accept that fact and to learn to walk beside them and to stop stepping on their toes. That's their limp. Let them walk out their limp. You can't fix them. It is God who fixes them. Yes, God may work through us to help them, but it's not for you to fix them. It is for the Holy Spirit to fix each person. And if you keep trying to fix everybody's limp, or what you see as a limp, you will continue to stumble and continue to make them fall, and you will continue to fall too. You will both fall short of the glory of God because you are trying to force them to be something they're not. And you, in turn, are getting out of that grace and getting out of the position God put you in to be something you are not. Come to peace. Let them walk out their limp while you walk out yours. Each one of us have a thorn in our flesh. Each one of us have the insecurity, and each one of us have our own hindrances and stumbling blocks. If you are always trying to go around and remove their stumbling block, then you are going to remove the grace that God has given them. Every piece of armor has its own uncomfortable, little poke. If you are always trying to file it down and trying to make it smooth for everybody else, you're going to leave them without any armor. You're going to leave them bare. Because unless I condition my body to withstand the pressure, unless I condition my fingers on those guitar strings, I will never grow the calluses. Now, what would be the point of someone coming and playing the guitar for me so that I didn't bruise myself? I would never be able to learn the guitar and to build those calluses so that I could play that guitar string. But while you are trying to take that out of them so that they don't grow callous, you remove the grace that God's giving them and you take them out of their process. I would dare say that with that pride and judgment, that is the most scary thing. Especially as pastor teachers, we can mess ourselves up, right? You know, we can do it wrong. We can be so full of ourselves. And you know what? That's our problem. We're just being full of it. But when it begins to interfere with others, that's where it becomes very dangerous, especially as pastor teachers and those who are influenced in the body of Christ, because it is no longer your calling that you destroy, but it's others. When you allow your judgment to interfere with another brother's walk, you pull them out of the race. Instead of you focusing on the race God has put you on, you walk the race and pull them off, and you both end up in the wayside, unable to continue on the track that God has laid you on. Follow in the grace God has given you. Stay on the road God has given you, because you have your hindrances. And what your limp is that you need to fix, that your brother's, is not going to be the same. So stay on the road. Stay on what God has given you. And give grace to those. You know, yes, they're going to step on your toes. Yes, they're going to be a big mess, especially when you put a prophet and you put a pastor in the room together. Oh, Lord, help us, because they each have a limp that seems to clash with each other. This one limps this way, this one limps this way, and we have a big conflict. Have grace. Have grace for one another, because their limp is not any better than yours. You both have the same limp, and when you learn to have grace, you guys can lock arms and walk together straight. But while you two are clashing your limbs against each other, you'll never be able to move. So learn to stand together, because when you have grace, you can switch sides and realize how you can connect your strengths together to move forward to that call that God has given you. Now, before we think that judgment is all great and bad and go around to deal with it with everybody, guys, there's a few wake-up calls. Judgment gives you a strength and gives you a power. You know, all of us, especially looking here, you see the negative. You see how it destroys you, how it destroys others, how it hinders you. But what you don't realize, I'm especially mentioning this to you pastor teacher students, not everybody wants to give up their pride. Why? Number one, it gives them a strength. It gives them a power, an authority to use over others. Because, you know, well, I'm right and you're wrong. So then I'm not at fault. It's not my fault. It's yours. It gives them a sense of protection. It gives them a guard so that they don't have to face the fact that they failed. You know, well, according to my standards, I'm in the right. Well, according to God's standards, you're in the wrong. And that's the power. Not everybody wants to be wrong. No one wants to be wrong. We all want to be right. We all want to be perfect. And, you know, oh, aren't I the best thing ever? No, you have things to work at. But pride covers over all those insecurities, covers over all those problems, all those flaws, the sword that you keep stabbing your brother with. It covers it all over, because, you know, you were so right. You are vindicated to think that way. You are vindicated and right to act that way according to your standards. But when you look at God's standards, they don't match up. And yeah, we like to hide under our pride. And, yep, I'm all nice and cozy here. I don't have to face the heat, until God brings that pressure and you are forced to face those prides and realize that you are the one hindering God's work. Judgment gives you the ability to tear down others. You know, more than just protecting yourself. When that judgment rises up, you have the right to tell somebody what they did wrong. Well, since, you know, I'm so, you know, well opinionated, I have the right to tell you how to run your business. I have the right, say, to tell you how to act and how to have a family. Even though I don't have a family, I have the right to tell you what to do. You know, you are so wrong and I'm so right. So I'm going to put you down so that you know your place. When God actually made us all as equals. God made us all to stand together, that we should not think of one's opinion higher than the other, to not put our thoughts above the other. The word actually tells us again and again to be like-minded, to have the same heart and love and compassion. But if you always think that your thoughts are higher than theirs, then how can you be like-minded? How can you come together in unity when you are always trying to be above the person beneath you? You know, it doesn't work. How can you rest in that same image? Because, you know, you want to be right. You want to have the say, especially when somebody hurts you. And I'm not always saying that this is righteous or this works, but especially when somebody hurts you, you want to have that say. You want to tear them down because they hurt you so bad. Well, you know what? Since you hurt me, I deserve to tell you what I think. I deserve to know, you deserve to know how I really feel about you. Do they? Because last I checked, you should not think yourself better than them. You should not lead them to destruction. You should not lead them to evil, but you should encourage and you should hurt. Yes, I'm saying that if somebody hurts you, that you need to hurt. You need to let it hurt you. If somebody does you wrong, let them do you wrong. Let them hurt you because you are on the same level. You are working together and you need to go through this process and learn how to handle this together. I mean, how else would you know how to work on a relationship until you learn how not to do it? How can you learn to be a peer if you first learn how not to do it? If you don't allow yourself to be hurt and to be wronged, you will never learn how to correctly have a relationship. You will never be able to correctly know how to handle people and circumstances, because we need to learn to work with each other, whether we like it or not. We're all in this earth together and we all have a purpose and goal, and we need to learn to be a team. And we need to learn how, even when we wrong each other, how to work together. We need to learn our boundaries and where we stand with each other. Okay, this is where my relationship boundary is. You can have this much of a say, but then after this, you are stepping over the line and this is God's place. Don't step into God's place. Learn your boundaries. Learn where you stand with each other so that when you guys do come as a team, you're able to link arms and to be able to run together without tearing each other down. Judgment opens the door for that judgment to come back at you and to tear down others around you. Now, I mentioned this before, but for more teachings, as I said, get the Crucified Life. It's going to go into more depth about this. I mentioned it already. I didn't plan to mention it at the beginning, but then the Holy Spirit said, they really need to know this point, so really mention this point. So I mentioned this point again. Let go of the judgment so that you don't get that same curse back at you. The same way that you tell others to act, you're going to act in that same way. The same way that you tell others that how they not to do it, you're going to start acting how they are, and you're going to start hurting others. You are going to become the person you judge. So if you judge your father, if you judge your boss, if you judge your siblings, if you say how irresponsible they are, you're going to become irresponsible. If you say, how awful your boss is, you're going to become that awful. If you're going to say how bossy and controlling they are, you're going to become that bossy and controlling. And, as much as that is a curse, realize that many will use that as a strength too. Because look at me, I'm just so humble. Look at me, I have all of these skills. I am able to do all these things because of all the judgments I put on everybody. And it becomes your boast. That judgment, that rule of judgment that you put in your life and that curse, you will then use that to help drive you forward. Well, I'm angry, so I can just run over everybody and just, dominate everybody. Yeah, but that judgment came from your father because you judged how angry he was. And now you've allowed it to become a force in your life. It no longer just becomes a curse. You allow it to become a force. Well, everybody hurt me, and so, now I'm just so hurt, and so I'm just so pitiful, so everybody has to pander to me. Well, now you are using that judgment as a force to manipulate and control others. Realize that it's not just you this judgment affects. It's not just you and your opinion. It begins to affect others, and it opens the door to the enemy. And it opens the door to the enemy through your circumstances. He no longer just leads and controls you, but controls your circumstances and is then allowed to control the circumstances of others, that it doesn't just affect you anymore. How do we deal with it? I like what it says here in James 4, verse 6. But he gives more grace. Therefore, God says, resist the proud, but give grace to the humble. If you want that grace, if you want that love, it starts right there, to become humble. And also what it says in Matthew 6, verse 14. For if you give man their transgressions, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. If you want to become humble, if you want to deal with this pride, it starts by forgiving that person of their transgressions. To come to peace with the striving within you, to let go of all the envy, to let go of all the strife, and to make the choice to put it down. Because, you know, when we're in that moment of judgment, we are so full of that striving. It's so driving us. We are so pushed by it. But when we stop to say, you know what? I let it go. I come to peace. I let go of the striving. I let go of that. And I choose to let it go and to not think more highly, to realize that it's not worth it. Guys, judgment is not worth the price, because whether you like it or not, one time or another, that judgment is going to come and bite you back. It is going to come and it's going to destroy you from the inside out. You know, with a curse, it destroys you from the outside in. With judgment, it's the other way around. It destroys the essence of God, who God made you, the nature God put in you. That pride and judgment destroys that nature, destroys the essence, that beauty that God put in you, and turns it around to something evil. It corrupts that spirit. It corrupts your soul until you become a nasty person that defiles others. It's not even just about how it hurts others. It's also how it destroys the beauty God put in you. God entrusted a strength. God entrusted a nature to you that he needs you to share with others. But through that judgment, it has destroyed that beauty, that strength he's given you, so that no one else can then lean on those strengths that God gave you. Because he gave you the strengths for a reason. He gave you eyes to see for a reason. But if you judge according to your own opinion, you take the strengths and beauty God gave you, you destroy others with it. When it comes to dealing with that judgment, realize that your sin is your sin. You know, while you're trying to look at the splinter in someone else's eye, you're never going to be able to deal with that beam in yours. And you know, we're so busy. Well, if they come right, then I will come right. You know, if they deal with that, then I can deal with mine. No, your sin and your pride is your sin and your pride. You cannot force someone else's pride out of them. You can only deal with the pride in yours. And you know, that's the crazy thing. It is like us humans to want to mimic and want to imitate each other. If you really want to influence them, then you be the source of change. If you really want them to let go of their pride and judgment, then you let go of your pride and judgment. When they see the fruit that is produced in your life, they will naturally want to give up that fruit, so that the fruit that they are eating, so that they can take on that fruit that God has given you, to take on that beauty, to take on that essence. But while you are just showing them the image of what not to do, showing them the curses, they're just going to see that. And what ends up happening? They end up copying you. Well, she's allowed to get away with it. Well, he's allowed to do that, so then I am. Yeah, well, your walk is your walk, and you stumbled and you caused them to stumble, but you have to focus on yours and just pray that they come right, because God takes care of them, that you can walk in that image that God needs you to be. You can be the source of a good influence. Let's not all influence each other in the bad. Let's learn to influence each other in the right way. Let the Lord be your shield. You know, when you have that pride, you want to be your own shield. You want to hide away and protect yourself. But it comes to a place of vulnerability when you put yourself on the battlefield. You drop your shield. You stand and let God be your shield. Because, you know, when God is your shield, you can't hold it. You can't, control it and say how it's going to protect you. You just have to rest in the hand of the Father and pray that he covers you. So it means submitting your will, coming to peace, resting it in the Lord's hand so that he can protect you. And it's terrifying. It's a vulnerable place, because, when you're standing there on the battlefield, all you see is your enemy before you. You don't see the shield, and you don't know if it's actually going to protect you. You just see that enemy coming at you with the sword. And you have to make the choice to drop your shield so that God can protect you. And even when those blows come and they hurt, to trust God to be your shield, because when you pick up that shield of pride, you're only going to cripple yourself and you're only going to cripple your opponent to the point where both of you are destroyed and neither one of you can stand. So learn to let the Lord be your shield. Put down your defenses. You can't defend yourself. I mean, go look back at the Garden of Eden. What did we have to protect ourselves from exactly? The lions slept with the lambs. Everything was perfect. There wasn't even any thorns, so we didn't even need any shoes. Man, that would be nice about now. We didn't have anything to protect ourselves from. The Lord was the one who protected us. The Lord is the one who tamed the lion and tamed them so that they wouldn't attack. So if you want that protection, you need to rest in the Lord's hand and let the Lord tame your opponent. Let the Lord have control and have the say. Because while you are busy trying to tame your opponent, you're only going to get destroyed. He's only going to tear you down. Because it's the Lord is the one who tames. The Lord is the one that put that nature in us. And it's the Lord that can use that nature for good. Let go of your opinions and your rights. Let go of what you think is right. All those experiences that you built up for the umpteen amount of years, you put in the fire and you burn. Because there's only one opinion that matters. And there's only one experience that matters. And that's God's. He's the only one. Yes, I'm not saying that you don't need life experiences. Yes, please have some life experience to know what's right and wrong. But when it comes to sharing those experiences, it should be God's experience that you are sharing. It should be his opinion that you're sharing. Because if you at any time share your experience or your opinion, then you're putting up that wall of judgment. You're putting up a false image for others to follow. They will never be able to reach that image. Because whether they like it or not, everybody's journey is different. Everybody's process, experiences are different. No one will be able to be your image. But you can share the image God made them, because here's the thing, God's opinion changes from person to person. His opinion of what's right and wrong for you will not be his opinion of what's right and wrong for somebody else. You see, us as humans have one opinion. We have one idea and it's ours. We have our opinion. But God's opinion changes from person to person because of who they need to be. He shares the experiences according to what they need. We share experience to what we need, but God shares it to what they need. So when you share that experience and wisdom that the Lord gave you, you're able to build them up instead of tear them down. Let the Lord vindicate you in his timing. You know, we want in that fight, in that moment, to right now to be vindicated and show that we're right. It doesn't happen like that. God is not going to do it right now. God will do it in his timing. God will do it when it's right. Let go of being right. When you're okay with being wrong, and when you are humbled enough to realize your mistakes, that's when God will vindicate you. Yes, when you are low in the dirt and when you are rolling in it and you feel terrible, yeah, that's when the Lord vindicates you. And it's so humbling when he does. But unless you allow yourself to be humble, God will not be able to vindicate you. Why? God vindicates you when you're right, when you're in the full burst of your pride. It's just going to lead to more pride. God can't vindicate you and can't boast about you while you are so full of yourself. It's only going to destroy you, and it's only going to encourage you to be more full of yourself. So humble yourself. If you want to be right, then be wrong. Isn't that the way that the Lord works? First will be last, last will be first, the right will be wrong, the wrong will be right. Who knew? If you want to be right, then be wrong. If you want to be lifted up, then be humbled. If you want to be that example of others, then humble yourself and allow God to be your example. When you let yourself go and get over yourself, God can lift you up. Because then when we get over ourselves, we take on more of the nature of Christ, and we are more of an example for others to follow. So don't force God to vindicate you in your timing. You will be vindicated in God's timing, but it starts by letting yourself go, letting go of what you think, what you know, and let God be right. Whether it's through that person or through a donkey, let God be right and let your opinion be lower than theirs. Let the Lord renew your heart and mind. Now, through this process, we have seen how it's our experiences we've projected on others, what we think is right and wrong. How do we get this right nature? How do we truly know what is right and wrong? How can we base our experiences on others? Because here's the thing, us humans need something to run on. We need a track. We need an experience to run on to know what's right and wrong. But it's the Lord's that you need to have. And this process only comes by renewing your mind. Yes, you can let go of your judgment by asking forgiveness, letting go of your pride, submitting yourself. Yes, that's how you let go of the judgment. But how do you let go of the pride? Well, you learn a new way, because pride bases everything on your experience. So in order to get rid of that pride, you have to base it on God's experience. And this only comes by reading the word and having God teach you what's right and wrong. When you come to him in those times and circumstances, Lord, how should I handle this? Lord, how must I do this? How must I act in this way? You begin to rewrite your experience with God's experiences. When you learn his way, it displaces your fleshly reaction and builds in a righteous reaction. And it is a process. It's not going to take you a week. It's not even going to take you a month. It's going to take you a lifetime to master this nature, because we are always growing. We are always learning. That's who we are in our human capacity. We're always going and learning. So as you go through life and you learn the new way of doing things, when you learn God's way of doing things, you will continue to grow in that righteousness. You will continue to grow in grace. But while you continue to base everything on your experiences, you will only continue to grow in pride, and your judgment is only going to get worse. It's only going to get more destructive. Now, I'll have a project at the end to help you renew your mind. But just for those of you who don't know what that means, renewing your mind means to bring displacement. It means to replace your thoughts and ideas with God's thoughts and ideas. It means to deliberately choose to let go of something, to take on something else, to deliberately let go of your opinions, to deliberately take on God's. That is what it means to renew. It means to displace, it means to replace what you think and what you know. Now, there's a couple of ways to do this. Especially it'll differ from prophet to teacher. I have my wonderful brother-in-law, Dalton, and he's the prophet, and I love him because, I come from a very teacher point of view, but then he comes with this prophetic point of view. I'm like, that's so right. That's so true. I never saw it like that. And, I always thought to renew your mind means to only read the word and get it to replace you. But he shared something really fascinating. He said he renews his mind by talking to the Lord, and the Lord physically explaining what is right and wrong. It's saying, okay, the Lord's saying, you see when you do this, well, this is wrong. I want you to do it in this way, and this is why you must do it. And he learns that way. He learns God's way deliberately from him. Now, it's not just reading the word. It's really having that conversation, deliberately seeing the Lord as your example and model, and learning from him, whether that way of learning is talking to him, whether that way of learning is journaling, reading the word, whatever teaches you his way is how you will renew your mind. So yeah, prophets, talk to the Lord one-on-one. Lord, what did I do wrong? Lord, what must I do right in this circumstance? And he will tell you. Teachers, okay, basing on my experience, this is what God needs me to do. This is what I'm doing wrong. This is how I can learn. And that's how you will go through the process of renewing your mind. Communication with the Lord and learning his way, letting him be your example. So now that we have gone on and talked about that judgment, let's talk on the other half of this message. Now, I know I'm going a little long, so I'll try and go through this quickly as possible. I see Ann giving me the thumbs up. I don't think anybody's ready to go home yet. But let's look at bitterness. Now, to identify bitterness, as I said, I'm now actually going to go through these symptoms very quickly. The stony heart. When you have bitterness, you put up the guard to protect you from the hurt, from the pain of life. You put up that stony heart to protect yourself. You will never be able to resolve your anger and resentment towards others. That stony heart is what traps in that hurt and resentment into your heart, that you're never able to let go of it because it's trapped within you and you won't be able to let it go. Bitterness conditions your thinking and what you believe. When you have that hurt, I've heard it many times, when people get hurt, they have this revelation of what's wrong and right. They have this understanding. Well, that's just what it means. When they do this, that's just what it means. It's always going to hurt like this. It's always going to do this. It conditions the way that you think. It conditions the way that you act. And when you take on that bitterness, you're always going to act in bitterness. Why? Because it's going to determine the ways that you step and the ways that you act. You will be unable to change your character and who you are. Because of your bitterness and because of the walls that you put around yourself, you stay in that place of hurt, which means that you remain hurt at all times. And that bitterness will be unable to change your character. You will use it to hurt others, but you yourself will always have that aggressive nature. You and yourself will always have that same stumbling block again and again. Why? Because you have trapped yourself in your bitterness and you will not be able to go that extra mile. You will always be stressed and unable to come to peace. I've already mentioned that plenty, but yeah, when you are that bitterness in you, you're judging, you're irritated, you're agitated, and especially when you're around that person, hearing the Lord becomes a really big challenge, because when you have that bitterness, all you hear is those words of bitterness in your ear. And you're always going to feel that resentment. You're always going to feel that bitterness, that you won't be able to come to peace and hear what God has to say. It blocks off your relationship with the Lord. It blocks you off from being able to hear and to feel others. You'll become a very lonely person because you protect yourself in your little wall. And it leads to anger and wrath. When you are so bitter, you get so full and you get so hurt. I mean, have you ever seen a dog that's hurt? You go to where that sore is and you try to poke it. How do they react? They bite at you, they snarl, they snap at you, and they go to attack your hand, because that is the area that hurts. Because there's so much pain there, you always react in that anger to defend yourself. Don't touch that. Leave me alone. No, don't go there. This is a no entry zone. Leave me alone. You're going to react in that anger whenever somebody tries to get close. When they try to tap on that hurt or try to get into that stony heart of yours, you're going to react in that anger. How is bitterness formed? Bitterness is a sin of the heart that comes from hurt. You see, we think that we just suddenly become bitter, that suddenly it just pops out of nowhere. No, bitterness stems from hurt. When you have that hurt inside of you and you are full of judgment and you're full of your pride, that hurt turns into bitterness. You see, being hurt is not a problem. We're all human. God made us to hurt. How else would we bleed and mourn for others? God made us to hurt. But when that hurt then turns into bitterness through sin, through judgment, when we make the choice to handle that hurt incorrectly, that is when it's led to bitterness. And this was the powerful message God taught me when I was putting this together. You don't have to be led to bitterness. You can hurt without being bitter. You can go through the process of mourning, of going through and being hurt and being wronged, but then have it lead to righteousness. But when we get hurt, and especially when we are prideful, and I want to show you this progression. Pride leads to judgment, and when hurt and judgment are mixed together, it makes bitterness. Why? Because judgment conditions and sets your environment for you to be led to bitterness. When you are involved and so wrapped up in yourself, that hurt then gets contaminated. I mean, have you ever seen it when a wound gets full of dirt? It then becomes infected. Well, that dirt is called judgment. When that judgment is mixed in with that hurt, it leads to bitterness. It leads to being contaminated. And when you can learn to deal with your hurt correctly, you will be able to properly process the hurt and allow it to become a strength. But when we have that hurt And it's a genuine hurt. Don't think that anybody who's bitter, that they're just bitter for the sake of being bitter. No, they're bitter because there's a hurt there. And that bitterness came as a scab to cover over that hurt that is still defiled and still hurting underneath. You know, we don't just get over it. No, when there is bitterness, you need to go there, but you need to learn to handle it correctly and learn how to approach it, because one person comes with the sledgehammer. Oh, you're just bitter. You're just tearing me down. I'm just going to come at you because you're so mean. Well, you come at them and you hit that sore. You hit that hurt. And then on the other hand, because you were so bitter, you cover over that hurt that you're never able to get that healing, that no one's able to come and to bring that displacement, to bring that healing that you need. When you learn to come to peace and to deal with that hurt correctly, you condition yourself. You know, just as I said, that bitterness conditions your thinking and your way of reacting. When you can learn to condition yourself correctly by dealing with your hurt correctly, you condition yourself and your thinking to react in a certain way. Now, here are some of the reasons how a hurt can occur. Number one is through your circumstances. Now, this is a new revelation that we came up with very lately, is that there's two main ways to get hurt. And this one through your circumstances is pretty dramatic, like being evicted, when your mother or father leaves you, when they abandon you and they hurt you, when you have no control over your circumstances, you get hurt by it. Yeah, when you get evicted from your house and you're living out in the street, you're hurt. Maybe it's not someone in particular. You might portray that hurt onto somebody, but your circumstances are what hurt you. It's not just people, but what happens around you. You get taken to a new school, everybody doesn't understand you and nobody likes you because no one speaks the same language as you. Well, whose fault is it? It's not deliberately one person's fault, but it's the circumstance that you are in. Now, us humans want somebody to blame, so just blaming our circumstance, just blaming the house that we got evicted from is not good enough. So we always project our hurt onto somebody. And we try to, well, it's your fault that I'm hurt. It's your fault that I'm this way. But in those times of circumstances, when you realize that actually it was nobody's fault, but it was the circumstance, you can learn to actually handle your circumstances correctly. And yeah, first off, you got to kind of ask for forgiveness for the Lord for getting bitter, because here's the thing. If we are not bitter at someone, we're going to be bitter at somebody who has the authority to change our circumstances. So some people get bitter at the Lord. Some people get bitter at their boss, their parents, whatever it is. We try to project our hurt onto somebody when the truth is they didn't hurt us. It was that circumstance. It was that place that you were in. When you can learn to let go of what you think is hurt, because while you're projecting that hurt onto someone and think that they are the problem, you're never going to be able to actually really look at the hurt and really look at how to deal with that problem in that circumstance, to learn to let go and to learn to get healing and let the Lord teach you a new way of reacting to your circumstances. While you're blaming it on the person, you're just going to think that they're the reason and they're the ones that can fix the problem. Actually, no, they can't fix the problem because it wasn't their problem that they made in the first place. But God is the one who can fix your circumstances and fix the problem you're in. So stop looking at the people that you're bitter or hurt at. It's not the people, it's your circumstances. Look there, and then you will be able to get the healing. The second way of getting hurt is when someone controls your will. When somebody, I heard it in many cases, when someone gets raped, when a spouse deliberately leaves them, when someone is abandoning you, it's like they are making a deliberate effort against you and they take your control out. They take away. When your sibling cheats on you and says they're going to do something and doesn't and gets you in trouble, you are hurt at that person. You are hurt at what they did to you, not necessarily against your circumstances. Like something getting stolen, you're bitter at something getting stolen. But when your sibling does something, you're bitter at them as a person. You need to identify the difference. Okay, Am I bitter at the person, or am I bitter at my circumstance? Because when they do something to you, you can then look at it. But if they didn't do anything to you, they can't give you healing. They can't take you through. So really look at the difference. When someone takes that control out of your hands and forces you to do what they want you to do, then it'll lead to that hurt, because then you don't have that say. You are not able to defend yourself. You're not able to put up the guard, because here's the thing. We do have dumb ideas all the time. And when we do something, it's like, I know that was stupid. I did something wrong. Oops, I'm sorry. That's my fault. But when somebody else does something stupid to you, then it hurts, because then I didn't have a say and I couldn't defend myself. I trusted you. My will was in your hands, and then you manipulated that will to hurt me. See, when we have that will, it's because we put that will in their hands, and they took that will and turned it around on us. See, it's not just a case of, well, I was stuck here, so it just happened. No, when it really hurts. I mean, if somebody out of nowhere, somebody I don't know, don't care about, just comes and says that I'm awful and terrible, I don't care. I don't care what they have to say. But if it's somebody I really care about, if it's my spouse, if it's my siblings, and they tell me how awful and terrible I am and how I can't do anything right, then it hurts, because I trusted them. I put my will and I put who I was in their hands, and they turned that will against me and said that it wasn't good enough, said that that who I was is not good. That will was turned against me, and that's where it hurts. And there's a big difference between the circumstances and your will being controlled. Bitterness is a choice. You can choose to get bitter at your circumstances. You know, even looking at those different kinds of hurts, you know, when you have your circumstantial hurt, when you're being evicted, or when, you know, something is stolen from you, you can make the choice to be bitter at somebody, to be bitter at your superiors who could have had control over those circumstances. And even then, again, with somebody who comes and controls your will, you can choose to be bitter or not. There is this stage while you're hurt to make that choice, to go that extra level, to be vindicated and be right, and to take matters into your own hand and to be bitter, or to allow the Lord to be your healing. You see, it doesn't just come upon you. You make the choice to be bitter. You make the decision whether to allow that bitterness to be your strength or allow God to be your strength. Because when you have that judgment, you take hold of that judgment and you have the say, and you are in control, and it leads to that stony heart. It leads to that scab, and it leads to contamination, that you then have the control. You then have the say, and you kick God out. Because when you give him the control, when you let him be your healing, let him be your protection, you won't lead to bitterness. Because what is bitterness but a way of protecting ourselves in the flesh? But when you go through the process of healing, you learn to let God be your healing through the Spirit. And you need to make that choice when that hurt comes up. Do I choose to be bitter in the flesh, or do I choose to allow God to heal me in his righteousness? And, you know, we want to take up that bitterness because it's so powerful, isn't it? Well, I just don't want to hurt this way anymore. So I would rather be angry than be hurt. Well, you know, I would rather fester and, you know, be sorry for myself than to just, you know, deal with it and nobody care. Well, you make a choice in those moments, but it doesn't have to lead to bitterness. You have a choice. And that's the most powerful thing. You can condition yourself for righteousness instead of conditioning yourself for bitterness and for judgment. When it comes to dealing with bitterness, first thing you need to realize is that God holds the key to healing. You know, we want the person who hurt us or a circumstance to come right to bring the healing, but it doesn't happen that way. God is the only one that brings the healing. You know, this person said what I said, you know, hurt me. They came at me and they really hurt. What they said stung. So they must come and apologize and make it better. Then I'll feel better. It's not how it works. When you try and force your healing from the person that hurt you, it's just going to lead to more hurting. It's just going to lead to more contamination because they don't have the healing to give you. They are unable to repair the damage that is done. They can't heal you. Only God can. When you take your hurt to God, instead of taking it to man, you can begin to rest in his hands. But what do? I mean, when your thumb is bleeding, you're running around, I need somebody to fix it, I need somebody to heal it. Well, instead of going to the person who you know can heal it, going to your father, going to get the Band-Aid kit to go put the Band-Aid on, well, you're still trying to run around, trying to go to every person to get it healed at, you're never going to deal with the hurt. You're never going to be able to actually get the healing. But that's what you're doing. You have a giant gash and you're running to the person that hurt you. Please heal it. Please heal it. And they're like, I don't have a Band-Aid kit. I can't help you. It's only going to get open and contaminated. But if you run to the Lord, to your heavenly Father, he can wash away that hurt. He can heal those scars and those bruises and even make it better than it was before. You don't have to remain hurt, but you do have to face your hurt. You see, bitterness comes when we don't want to look at our hurt. We are hurting, it's painful, but we kind of want to cover it over and just make it better and rather feel any other way than hurt. So we kind of put something over it so that we don't have to look at it. But when you really go through and deal with your hurt properly in the moment, you really look at it and say, okay, yes, this hurts. This is awful. I don't like feeling this way. Father, help me. Lord, give me that healing. Lord, I can't do this on my own. I can't handle this pain on my own. It hurts too much. God can step in and bring the healing, but you have to be willing to look at it. You can't just, yep, done, healed, finished, sorted. No, you gotta go there. You gotta face the hurt. You have to face the rejection. You have to face every ounce of it, because until you do, you will never be able to fully go through the process of the healing. You'll only kind of heal half the scar. You'll be right back where you started. You won't get the full process of healing. So really look at it. Really look at how that hurt. Look at how God can heal it and what really hurt, because what we think hurt and what really hurt is not often the same. And you really need to see, okay, no, what I thought was my hurt. This person was actually, no, my circumstances. Yeah, I really am hurt. I really am, and I need to go there. Do not try and heal yourself. Let the Lord lead you to healing. I've heard it so many times where it's like, I'm hurt, but I just have to suck it up. I just have to deal with it so that I can then move on. Well, that's not the way of dealing with your hurt. Only God can deal with your hurt. And when you try to heal yourself, you just put a cap on it. You put a judgment on, and you will lead you to, it might lead you to bitterness, or it just might lead you into deception and open the door to the enemy. And the enemy becomes your healing instead of God. And when you try to fix yourself, you're not fixing yourself. I just have to suck it up and I just have to take care. No, God's got to take care. God is the one who's got to take you through this healing. And if you don't go through that process of healing, well, you try to heal yourself. Nope, I'm fine. Nope, I'm happy now. I'm making the choice to not be sad. I'm going to do everything that makes me happy, so then I'm not hurting anymore. The hurt's still there. You're just running in vain, because that's what we try to do. If we don't try to, make it, try to make it better, we just run from it. If we're not there, actually dealing with it, we're just going to run from it and pretend it's not there. But then it comes and catches up with you later. Go through the hurt in the heat of the process. When the blood is still fresh is the time to deal with your hurt. Don't wait until the enemy has come through and contaminated your spirit. Don't wait until circumstances are forced upon you to force you to deal with that hurt. Deal with it in the moment. And this is how you can. Number one, deal with your judgment. If you are hurt when you are judging, it's going to lead to bitterness and you're not going to make the right choice. So step one, deal with your judgment. Let go of your preconceived ideas and why you think that person hurt you and why you think that it's right and wrong. Let it go. It doesn't matter who was right or wrong. It doesn't matter what circumstance was right or wrong. When you judge in your hurt, it's just going to rile you up and it's just going to contaminate your spirit. So let it go. Take on and ask the Lord what you need to do. Ask the Lord what was the right thing to do. Let him teach you the right way to react. And then number 2, give your hurt to the Lord. Don't try and ask everybody else for help and forgiveness when it's God who will be the one to bring you the healing. You know, so often we want someone to make it better, but when you come to the Lord, you know, something powerful happens. Instead of just getting the healing, God conditions your soul. God conditions your heart. He conditions you to be able to withstand, to love in the replacement of the hurt. You see, it's not good enough just to not be hurt. Can you love in the hurt? Can you love through the pain? Because that's what true healing looks like, is when you love through the pain and God brings the healing and it conditions you for an act of love. Bitterness conditions you for an act of hatred and anger, but healing through love conditions you for an act of compassion and love. It's a way to really pick up that nature. I mean, I'll even share for myself, in my moments of hurt, when I felt really sore and terrible and I was having my pity party, when I came to the Lord, I came to know a part of his love and his compassion, something I would have never even experienced had I just been on my own accord and I'd been, you know, in my powerful teacher and I would have been full of the Spirit. I would have never known that love and compassion that he had for me until I came to him with my broken heart, until I came to him with my hurts. I would have never been able to pick up that nature. And especially for those of you in campus that are going through more of the prophetic, if you want that heart of the Father, if you want that love and compassion, especially you pastor teachers who need that heart of the shepherd, if you want that heart and love and compassion, it comes by giving your bleeding heart to Jesus. Because when you give him your pain, he imparts to you his heart. He takes that sore and replaces it with a part of his heart that beats in its place. It powerfully changes the way that you think is right and wrong. It changes what you think is hurt and not, because that hurt becomes a power. It no longer has to be a stumbling block and something that pulls you down, but something that can build you up. If you want that heart of Jesus, it comes by first bleeding and letting God be your healing. Every moment that you get bitter, it ruins an opportunity to pick up the power that Christ is offering you, to pick up that love. We all go through our trials. We all go through our experiences, and we all go through hurt. But real change comes when God takes that hurt and turns it around for his glory. That's when it really counts, and that's when it really matters. So go through the process. Let it hurt, and let God take you through it. Now, for those of you who have bitterness, we have a separate teaching on it. I really wanted to focus on this topic at this moment, because if we can learn this power, the beauty, and pick up his heart and his compassion, we won't have to deal with bitterness. We won't have to deal with the judgment and condemnation, because God will be our righteousness. God will be the one to strengthen and empower us. And if nothing else, I really want to encourage you, through every sunny day and through every stormy one, run to Jesus. Let him teach you right and wrong. But more importantly, let him teach you how to love. In those moments of hurt, let him teach you how to really love. Because the more you hurt, the more compassion you have. Because compassion is a move of our emotions. So when we give those emotions to the Lord through our hurt, he's able to control them and able to use them as a force to act out in that love. Grace leads to love. If you want to act out in that love, give the Lord your heart. Let him teach you his grace. Let him teach you his way, so that no matter what, your default is love. Your default is to act out in compassion instead of to act out in that hurt. Now, we went long, so I'm now going to get to our group projects. Now, I have 2 group projects here. We won't be able to do everybody in class this time, because I have something very special in mind. So I have a project for all of you online to go and do as a self project, and then for those of you who are in class to then do together. So next time, be in class so that you can take part. You never know when there'll be an exclusive project. All right. So for the self project, I want all of you to, who, you know, as you go through this message, any judgments that came up, write them down. Any opinions, experiences that prove that you are right and where you feel that you are vindicated, write them down. All those judgments where you had a right to hurt, where you had a right to act that way, make a list of them. Now, this is just between you, so you can be as honest and as blunt as you want. Make a list of everybody that you fought with or had a disagreement with. Identify the core of the conflict. Make a choice to humble yourself and to understand the other person's argument. Lift that person up in prayer to the Lord. Let go of your judgments towards that person. You see, first you're going to see how those judgments, all those judgments you have now, they don't have to necessarily be in an exact order or in a time frame, but take a look at what your judgments are. Then looking at the conflicts, do you see how your judgments were portrayed through those conflicts? You see, it's not even just about the person anymore. You're taking all your hurt, all your experiences, all of your thoughts, and projecting them into those fights, into those conflicts that you have with others. It's not just a judgment anymore, but you are forcing it upon others. So really look at it, and then give them to the Lord, lift it up in prayer, and then ask forgiveness for your sin and where you judged. Then finally, spend time daily this week taking time with the Lord and to read over the following passages in the Word until it renews your mind. The passages I would like you to read is Romans 12, 1 Corinthians 13, and Hebrews 12. Now, you don't have to read all of them in one day, but I don't know about you, but after a while, I kind of get bored with reading the same passage over and over. So take a day, each day to read one. One day, read Romans. The next day, read Hebrews. Next day, Corinthians, and then repeat. So go through those passages, take a time every day to really meditate. Don't push it and read them all. Really spend time. And as I said, you don't just have to read the Word. Spend time journaling. Spend time asking the Lord His opinions. If a specific conflict comes up, take that conflict to the Lord and meditate on it. Say, Lord, what must I do right? What must I do wrong? What did I do wrong? What can I fix? And He'll be able to explain and tell the difference. Renew your mind. Now, for the in-class project. Okay, so being the graphics designer in the ministry, I decided to have a little bit of fun with this project. What we're going to do is we're going to play a board game. So I have made a cute little board game here. Might be backwards because of the camera. But anyway, so what we're going to do is I'm going to have all the principals there should have their board game, a piece of dice, and some game pieces. You're going to start all of your pieces out here on the starting line. You're going to take the dice, and you're going to roll it, and you're going to move past the little sections here. You're going to see these little landmarks: pride, judgment, hurt, and bitterness. As the game piece passes over each of the landmarks, each class who passes over, you're going to name what your hurt, pride, bitterness, whatever it is, one, because you guys are going to be a pretty full class. So each person name one as you pass over each of those landmarks. The first person to get to the end of the game, which is to bitterness here, wins the game.
Oh, boy.
So one quick note, this is a judgment-free zone. I just have to put it out there because we know about it. I even put here in my notes, disclaimer, this class is a judgment-free zone. No opinions or judgments allowed. Let everyone share their own experiences and share what is on their heart without anyone else adding their opinions or ideas to their experiences. You know, when it comes to dealing with those judgments, one of the things we're afraid of is somebody will discover our judgments. I don't know what it is about us humans, but it's like we have these judgments, we know, but we're afraid someone else is going to discover them. So really be open. Listen to each other. Don't judge each other. Let everybody, let it out, because, you know, when we get our judgments out of our spirit and out of our mind, you know, it's not as terrible as we think it is. It's just all terrible in our head, and it conditions our thoughts. But if we can get our judgments out of our head, it's kind of like you lay them out on the table and you can leave them there. So let everybody share. Don't give them an idea. Well, you know, you missed out on this and you missed out on that and you forgot this point of your judgment. No, don't do that. Let them share. Let them be open. And the Lord will bring the conviction as he sees fit. At the end of the game, each one of you take a time to discuss and see how your pride and judgment progressed from each other. See how it started off as just being you yourself, leading to that judgment, and how it led all the way up to that bitterness. Really see the progression, because if you can learn to identify it, the next time it comes, you can stop and prevent that hurt right in the heat of the moment. So I'm looking forward to this. I know I'm probably going to eavesdrop on the guys as they do the project, but go through and yeah, if any hurt comes up, please feel free, guys, to get a hold of your trainers, get a hold of, especially guys, you associates, to get a hold of me and Austin, so that we can take you through this process of dealing with your bitterness. You know, deal with the hurt in the moment, but we'll be here to help take you guys through the bitterness. So I'm going to hand over back now to the principals, and you guys enjoy, okay?
Ooh-wee. Okay.
boy.
Oh, wow.
I
That
felt
was a
like
very full message.
I
wasn't
just ate a T-bone steak and potatoes. I'm very full.
it? Mike is in the back giving us the sniper eyes.
Super spy.
Woo-wee! Oh, man. Okay, I was trying to give you guys volume there, but I don't even know what happened. Oh, there you are. There you are. So, yes, I gave you some volume there, and they say, just in case we want to hear something from you. But, oh, man, that message was so full, you guys. Okay, I'm going to pull one out of Prophet Michael's book. I want each one of you guys to write this down.
Uh-oh.
Write this down. You may have it written down already from the message, but write this down. Make it bold and make it underline in all caps. Wow. Grace is the antidote for pride. Grace is the antidote for pride. I know you said something else, antonym, but I liked antidote because I just figured that's what you meant, because it just seemed right. It's the antidote for pride. You know, I love this even in the game. It says pride to judgment, to hurt, to bitterness. If we can deal with the pride in the beginning, like she said, this entire message, guys, then we don't have to worry about the judgment. We don't have to worry about the unnecessary hurt and the bitterness that stems from that pride. Look, she even read this. He resists the proud and gives grace to the humble. This word grace kept coming again and again and again. And even right as she was ending off in talking about the bitterness, she said grace, even grace gives, leads to love, to get rid of the bitterness. Grace, grace, grace. Now, as a prophet, because I know some of you that are listening are prophets, we like to do this. We want to die already. We get on the cross, we come and throw ourselves on the altar, and we die already. But this is pastor-teacher school. I'm speaking to you as a pastor. I'm speaking to you as a teacher. I'm speaking to you as a leader. You don't get to just go and die already. You get to give grace already. Today, I'm challenging you from this message. If you take nothing else with you, you take this with you, that you get up out of that seat and you give grace everywhere you go. You give grace to displace the pride. You give grace to get rid of your judgments. You give grace in place of your bitterness. You give grace, pastor. That is your die already. You are not changed as a pastor in the dying. You are changed in the doing. That's the pastor-teacher school way. We change in our action. We don't change when we die. We change in the resurrection. And your resurrection today is that you will go out and you will give grace. You understand? That is how you will change the body of Christ in your doing, Pastor. So get out there and do today. Get out there and do that project. Get out there and give grace to that boss that you just can't stand, which you don't even know the other side of their story, but we're not going to get into that. You're just going to give grace. You're going to give grace to your children that you don't understand. You're going to give grace to that friend that you have that always rubs you the wrong way. You're going to give grace because that's how you're going to get through all of this and how you're going to come out with the fragrance of Jesus on you. So are you ready, guys? Let's get into this project, and you leave today knowing that you were called to this chat, to this meeting, to this live session because God needs you to give grace.